Now we're going to talk about cover. And the really awesome thing about Heavy Gear is that it's a 100% completely 1/44th scale or 12 millimeter game, which means the terrain and the models are at 1/44 scale, so there's no abstractions as far as is this as high as the gear, or I have to do the math and see how many inches it is, and then maybe it is covering the guy even though technically he's not covering the guy. But since it is a 1/44 scale game and the terrain is 1/44 scale, the cover, if it covers the guy, it covers the guy. We're going to start off with open cover. As you can see, this guy, he's completely out in the open like a dummy, and luckily he looks like he's running and trying to hurry up and get in the cover. But when you're out in the open like that, you take an attack. The attacker actually gets a bonus for trying to shoot at you, and he gets a +1 bonus, which means when he rolls his dice, he automatically gets a +1 to roll to hit you. Now, this guy is in kind of like partial cover. See, he's not, half of him isn't exactly covered, but he's at least in some kind of cover. Now, the attacker attacking him would get no bonus at all for attacking him because he's at least in some kind of cover. Now, this guy here, because half of him is being covered, that's called partial cover, and he would get a bonus of -1 in order to, the attacker would get a negative bonus a negative bonus of 1 to attack this guy. And then you would have this guy here who is in full cover. Not only is in full cover, but it's solid, which means the enemy can't even get a lock on him. We're now going to cover attacks. And the first part of attacks is getting a lock on the other guy. And we're going to take this guy as an example as our attacker. Now, this guy can clearly see this guy and this guy. Even though this guy is in partial cover, he can see him because he's partially covered. He can, he's standing over whatever it is that's in front of him. And this guy is in the open, so he can clearly get a lock on these two. What isn't clear is if he can get a lock on this guy, which is in partial cover. Now, there's a thing called concealment, and the way that concealment works is it's based off what your cover is. Now, this would count as light cover because it's like woods, trees, shrubs. This would be like a building, and this would be like a building, which would count as solid cover. And if he was behind this, the guy wouldn't even be able to have a chance to get a lock on him. But because he's behind the light cover here, he's able to at least attempt to get a lock on him. Now, because it looks like he's got at least 1 inch of soft cover between this guy and this guy, he gets an automatic +1 to his concealment score. So now the detection score of the warrior is 3. Now 3 is greater than 1, so this guy can detect this guy because his concealment wasn't high enough to hide him from this guy's sensors.
Now that you have a target lock, let's take a shot. Our attacker here, as you can see marked by his die, has stopped. The person he's shooting at has used his combat move. I know that the die isn't behind him, but we want you to be able to see it a little bit clearer. So now he's going to take his shot. He's going to roll 2d6 to represent his skill. Take the highest die, in which this case, good for him, is a 6. Now the defender rolls 2 dice to oppose his roll, who also rolls a 6. Now, normally, this would mean it goes to the defender, but there are also a lot of modifiers that have to come into play. One, he stopped. So since he stopped, that meant he took time to get down behind his cover and take aim. That gives him a +2 modifier to his dice roll, making that an 8. Then, the person he's shooting at is in the open, giving him an additional +1, making it a 9. Then you have to take away the modifiers and created by the person he's shooting at. 1, because he did move, it's a -1 to his number. So that 9 goes back down to an 8. Then you have to take into account the range of the weapon he's using. In this case, it's a light autocannon. And he's at 13 inches, which just puts it into long range. So he'll get a -1 for that. So that 8 goes back down to a 7. So even with the negatives, he still is at a score of a 7 versus his opponent's score of a 6, which means he hit the target. Now that we've determined that he hit, let's go into damage. The margin of success, or the difference between the attacker's dice and the defender's dice, in this example is a 1. You would multiply the margin of success by the damage that the weapon that he's using is doing. In this case, he's using his light autocannon. So 8, which is the damage it does, multiplied by 1 is only 8. Light autocannon is only 8. The damage of the hunter is more than 8. So that means he did no damage. So he hit, but it was more like a glancing shot. Next, we're going to cover reaction fire. In the last example we had a figure that was here in cover. The chieftain here knew that someone was there, but because of the soft cover, he couldn't take a shot. So he chose to withhold his action to take a reaction fire. So which means he's going to wait till the opponent's turn to do something. So now they've had their fire, that's been reconciled. He now emerges from cover to take a shot on him, so the two of them can concentrate their fire to try to take out that warrior. But the chieftain who was here held his action. Once he bursts out of cover, now he chooses to take his shot. And to work this one out, you take into consideration their movement. He gets a -1 to the attack. He adds a -1 to the attack roll since he moved. He gets no modifier. Also, the range is short on his medium autocannon, so again, no modifier. But because now he's in the open, the attacker will get a +1 on his die roll. So the +1 and the -1 will balance each other out, allowing him to have a straight up die roll. So now we have the chieftain who waited until this guy who's in the open, fires, gets a 5. The would-be attacker, who's getting shot at during his movement, rolls and gets a 4. There we have a margin of success of 1 again. Now we multiply that margin of success by the medium autocannon's damage of 10, which does not break the hunter's armor of 15.